Today, we're going to delve into one of the scariest scenarios in everyday life, sharing a home with someone who's hiding a deadly secret. Get ready to hear 7 horror stories involving roommates who seemed normal, but were hiding dark and dangerous mysteries. We're going to explore chilling stories of people who only discovered too late who they were really living with, showing that true terror can be much closer than we imagine. So, get comfortable, look around your room, and let's begin this chilling journey. Oh, and before any secrets come to light, take the opportunity to subscribe to the channel, activate the bell, and leave a like. This helps the channel a lot and ensures that you don't miss any scary content like this. Let's go. The Locked Diary. When Lucas Oliveira arrived in Leeds to study for his master's degree in psychology, he was excited about the idea of sharing a flat with a fellow British student. He found an advert for a room on a university forum and, after a brief online interview, arranged a room with Thomas Evans, a reserved and polite engineering student. The flat was simple but well located, close to the campus and a busy park. At first, things went smoothly. Thomas was quiet but helpful, always keeping his bedroom door closed and keeping meticulous schedules. Soon, Lucas began to notice strange things. Thomas never allowed anyone into his room, not even to clean. At night, Lucas would hear muffled noises coming from the other side of the wall, furniture scraping, whispering, sometimes the sound of a chair turning. He casually asked about the noises, but Thomas dismissed the issue, attributing them to the wind or the building's old heating. As the weeks went by, Thomas became increasingly reserved. He avoided long conversations, never received visitors, and was meticulous about his schedule. Lucas tried to get closer, but was always met with cold and evasive answers. The atmosphere in the apartment became tense. One morning, Lucas woke up to find his roommate's door ajar. Thomas had left early for a field trip. Curiosity overcame his fear. Lucas entered and found an impeccably tidy room, except for a padlocked drawer. On top of the desk, a black-covered notebook caught his attention. Lucas couldn't resist flipping through it quickly. Blank pages, except for a phrase repeated dozens of times: "No one is who they seem to be." The discomfort turned to uneasiness when, one rainy night, Lucas heard Thomas leave in a hurry. He took advantage of the absence to try to find out what was in the locked drawer. Using a staple, he managed to open the padlock. Inside, he found a thick diary with obsessive notes about classmates, schedules, habits, and names of people Lucas had never heard of. The last pages described unsolved crimes in Leeds, with details that had not been released by the police. In one list, Lucas recognized his own name, with dates and observations about his routine. Tensions rose when the police showed up at the building, investigating the disappearance of an international student who lived a few blocks away. Upon hearing of the visit, Thomas became visibly nervous and began avoiding Lucas, locking himself in his room for hours. The obsessive behavior escalated. Thomas began taping aluminum foil to the windows, covering cell phone cameras, and installing extra locks on the bedroom door. Lucas noticed that his roommate spent hours browsing obscure internet forums, researching disappearance and surveillance methods. Over the next few days, Lucas began to feel like he was being watched. He noticed that Thomas was writing down everything. He did, including his departure and arrival times, phone calls, and even text messages. One day, when he returned home, he found his toothbrush out of place and a t-shirt missing. Paranoia set in. Lucas began to sleep poorly, hearing footsteps in the hallway during the early hours of the morning and feeling the doorknob of his room being tested from outside. The height of his fear came when Lucas found a note under his door that read, "You trust too much." That same night, he heard Thomas whispering incoherent sentences in the next room, followed by low laughter and the sound of something being dragged. He then decided to discreetly install a camera in his own room, pointing it at the door. The Next morning, when he reviewed the footage, he saw Thomas sneaking in, rummaging through drawers and photographing personal documents. Lucas photographed the diary pages and the camera footage and left the apartment, heading straight to the police. He handed over the evidence and reported all of his colleagues' strange behavior. The investigation revealed that Thomas was a suspect in at least 3 disappearances of international students in the last 2 years. In his room, the police found personal items of the victims, photos taken from a distance, and maps with escape routes and body disposal sites. Thomas was arrested while trying to flee the city. During questioning, he confessed to having targeted vulnerable victims, always newly arrived students with no immediate family. He kept detailed records of each target, studying their habits for weeks before making his move. The diary was his trophy and roadmap, where he planned each step and recorded the progress of his hunts. The case shocked Leeds and gained national attention. The university revised its reception protocols for international students, and the building where Lucas lived began requiring criminal records checks for new tenants. Lucas, traumatized, moved to another country and spent months in therapy, dealing with the guilt of not having suspected the crime sooner. The story of the locked diary has become a reference in debates about security in student housing and the danger of blindly trusting seemingly harmless colleagues. For students around the world, it has served as a warning. The real danger may be on the other side of the wall, hidden beneath the most banal routine, just waiting for the right moment to turn living together into a real nightmare. The Locked. When Sophia Almeida, 23, moved to Dublin to study literature on an exchange program, she never imagined that her worst nightmare would begin in her own apartment. She found the room in an online ad, and after a quick video interview, she arranged everything with her future roommate, Sean Murphy, a 27-year-old Irishman studying postgraduate studies in history. The flat was old, but well located, close to the city centre and the university. From the beginning, Sean was friendly but reserved, establishing clear rules. Everyone would take care of their own space, and most importantly, no one should enter his room, which was locked whenever he left. At first, Sophia thought the rule was strange, but she respected it. Their coexistence was silent, almost mechanical. Sean had methodical habits. He left early, came back late, avoided long conversations, and never received visitors. At night, Sophia would hear muffled noises coming from the next room, furniture being dragged, whispers, the sound of something being hammered or fitted together. When she asked, Sean would smile and say it was just organizing or work late. As the weeks went by, Sophia began to notice disturbing details. Personal objects were disappearing from the apartment, an earring, a scarf, even a favorite. "Wug?" she asked Sean, who denied any knowledge. One night, he woke up to a metallic noise coming from the hallway. He peeked through the crack in the door and saw Sean in his pajamas, carrying a heavy box into his room. He noticed Sophia's gaze, and the next day reinforced the rule. "Please never come into my room. It's important for my privacy." Tensions grew when the police knocked on the apartment door, investigating the disappearance of a foreign exchange student who lived on the same street. Sean responded calmly, but became visibly uneasy after the visit. In the days that followed, he began locking his room even more tightly, installing an extra padlock and covering the keyhole with duct tape. Tensions reached their peak on a Friday night when Sophia woke up to a strange noise coming from Sean's room. It was the sound of wood being dragged, followed by loud banging and a soft, muffled cry. Fear prevented her from acting immediately, but the next morning she noticed that Sean had left early and left the bedroom door unlocked. Curiosity and her survival instincts got the better of her. Sophia went in. The room was dark, with thick curtains and a musty smell. In the corner, a bookcase covered by a sheet hid a secret compartment, revealed by a false door in the wall. Inside, Sophia found a macabre collection. Photos of missing people, newspaper clippings, personal objects such as earrings, scarves, watches, and even locks of hair. There were also notebooks with detailed notes on victims' routines, schedules, maps of the neighborhood, and chase records. At the back of the compartment, a wooden box contained forged documents and passports of people wanted by the police. The shock was immediate. Sophia took pictures of everything with her cell phone and ran out of the apartment, heading straight to the police station. She handed over the evidence and reported all of Sean's strange behavior. The investigation revealed that he was a suspect in at least 4 disappearances of foreign students in the last 3 years. In the 4th, the police found even more evidence. Videos recorded with hidden cameras, stalking diaries, and objects belonging to victims who were never located. Sean was arrested while trying to flee the city. During questioning, he confessed to having targeted vulnerable victims, always women who had recently arrived in Ireland and had no family nearby. He would watch them for weeks, stealing small objects to test their attention, and when he felt safe, he would act. The secret compartment was his sanctuary, where he kept trophies and planned his next moves. The case shocked Dublin and gained international attention. The university revised its reception protocols for foreign students, and the building where Sophia lived began requiring criminal records checks for new tenants. Traumatized, Sophia moved to another neighborhood and spent months in therapy, dealing with the guilt of not having suspected the situation sooner. The story of the locked door has become a symbol of the hidden dangers in seemingly safe environments and the risk of blindly trusting roommates. For students around the world, it has become a warning. The real danger may be on the other side of the wall, hidden beneath the most banal routine, just waiting for the right moment to turn living together into a real nightmare. The identity. Collect afresh out of law school, Gabriel Costa arrived in Manchester to start his first job at a law firm. To save money, he rented a shared apartment with another young man, Ethan Turner, a postgraduate student in psychology. Ethan was polite, reserved, and maintained an almost military routine: fixed hours, solitary meals, no visitors. At first, Gabriel thought his colleague was just introverted, but soon small incidents began to bother him. Documents would disappear: ID cards, bank cards, correspondence. Gabriel, meticulous, was sure where he kept everything. Personal objects would also disappear, such as a family watch and a new pair of glasses. When asked, Ethan would always answer calmly, suggesting that Gabriel was absent-minded or that the building had problems with deliveries and thefts. The building manager, however, denied any history of theft. Tensions grew when Gabriel noticed strange emails arriving in his name and social media accounts being accessed from unknown devices. He became suspicious of Ethan, especially after he noticed that his roommate avoided any conversation about the past, changed the subject when asked about family, and never allowed anyone into his room. The nights became restless. Gabriel would hear Ethan whispering on the phone, typing furiously on the computer late into the night. One night, when he came home early from work, Gabriel found Ethan's bedroom door ajar. Curiosity overcame fear. Inside, piles of documents were spread out on the bed. Identity cards, passports, credit cards, 3x4 photos of different people. There was a folder with newspaper clippings about disappearances of young people in the region, as well as detailed notes about the routines, schedules, and psychological profiles of the victims. On the computer, Gabriel saw files with names and personal information, as well as tutorials on document forgery. The shock was immediate. Gabriel took pictures of everything and left the apartment, going straight to the police. In the following days, as the investigation unfolded, Ethan became increasingly restless, locking himself in his room and avoiding any contact. When the police searched the apartment, they found hidden safes with dozens of original documents, cloned cards, and even cell phones belonging to missing victims. It was discovered that Ethan had been assuming the identities of the victims, opening bank accounts, renting properties, and even traveling under other people's names. He alternated between identities to avoid being tracked, destroying evidence, and leaving false trails to mislead investigations. Gabriel learned during the interviews that Ethan was suspected of direct involvement in the disappearance of at least 3 former roommates in other cities. The pattern was always the same. Ethan would approach people with few family ties, study their habits, steal documents, and when ready to trade, make the victim disappear. In some cases, the police found traces of violence and signs of a struggle in the homes, but never definitive proof until then. The case gained national attention. The media dubbed Ethan the identity collector, and fear spread among young professionals and students in big cities. A shaken Gabriel spent months in therapy, dealing with the guilt of not having noticed sooner and the fear of being followed or having his identity used in new crimes. The building began requiring background checks and monitoring visitors, and the police stepped up awareness campaigns for people who share apartments with strangers. The investigation revealed that Ethan maintained a network of contacts in the digital underworld, selling identities to criminals and using his own victims as shields. He confessed that he took pleasure in manipulating other people's lives, putting on new personalities and erasing the traces of those who crossed his path. For Gabriel, the bitter lesson remained. The real danger may be on the other side of the door, hidden under the appearance of a harmless colleague, ready to turn routine into a nightmare with no way back. Today, Gabriel warns other young people about the risks of sharing a home with strangers, participates in lectures on digital security and identity, and never leaves documents in plain sight. The case of the identity collector remains a symbol of modern terror, the predator who hides in routine, ready to erase whoever is necessary to continue living multiple lives while the victims disappear without a trace. Hey guys, the stories about roommates with deadly secrets are still pretty chilling, aren't they? If you're enjoying these suspenseful stories, take a quick break, subscribe to the channel, and leave a like. This really helps the channel grow and motivates me to keep bringing you more chilling content. Now let's get back to the next stories. There's still a lot of scary stuff ahead. 4. The fourth substitute. When Alejandro Ramirez, 22, arrived in Vienna to start his engineering exchange, he was eager to experience sharing an apartment with students from different countries. The building was old, close to the city center, and the room he rented had been advertised by an Austrian colleague, Lucas Berger, a medical student. From the start, Alejandro noticed that Lucas was friendly, but there was something strange in the air. The room he was to occupy was completely empty, with no trace of its previous owner except for a welcome letter left on the bed. As the weeks went by, Alejandro noticed that no one was talking about the previous occupant of the room, a French student named Julien Moreau. When he asked, Lucas and the other classmates would change the subject, saying that Julien had finished his studies and returned to France. But Alejandro, curious, decided to do more research. He discovered that Julien's name was still on the mailing list and letters in his name were still arriving. When he tried to contact the university, he was informed that the system still registered Julien as an active student, with no official request to transfer or leave the country. The discomfort increased when Alejandro found, hidden behind a shelf, a notebook with Julien's name on it. The last pages contained disjointed sentences, reports of insomnia, paranoia, and fear of someone inside the apartment. I think Lucas is following me. He knows everything about me. I can't trust anyone. Here, read one passage. Alejandro felt a chill run down his spine. He decided to talk openly with Lucas, but his reaction was evasive. Lucas became irritated, claiming that Julian was unstable and that he couldn't handle the pressure of the exchange program. The following nights were marked by whispers in the hallway and noises coming from Lucas's room. Alejandro noticed that his roommate would have long conversations on the phone in low voices and would sometimes lock the apartment door even when everyone was inside. One morning, when he woke up to get a drink of water, he saw Lucas standing in the hallway, motionless, staring at Alejandro's bedroom door. He pretended not to notice, but the tension became unbearable. Determined to understand what had happened, Alejandro sought information from other residents of the building. An elderly neighbor, Mrs. Greta, said that she rarely saw Julian leave the apartment, and that, after a loud argument with Lucas, she never saw him again. She also mentioned that Lucas had a habit of manipulating his colleagues, convincing them not to get involved in other people's business. Alejandro, frightened, decided to go to the police, but without any concrete evidence, he was only told to stay alert. The situation escalated when Alejandro found Julian's personal belongings in a forgotten box in the storage room. Photos, notebooks, an expired passport, and a letter never sent to his family in France. Among the objects was also a pen drive. When he opened the contents on the university computer, Alejandro found audio recordings in which Julian reported feeling watched, described fights with Lucas, and mentioned being afraid of being poisoned. In one of the files, Julian said, "If something happens to me, it's Lucas." The shock was immediate. When confronted by Lucas, his colleague reacted aggressively, threatening Alejandro and demanding that he stop messing with the past. That night, Alejandro locked himself in his room and sent digital copies of the documents he had found to the police and Julian's family. He spent the night awake, hearing footsteps in the hallway and fearing that Lucas would try to harm him. The investigation was reopened. Police discovered that Lucas had forged documents to pretend that Julian had left the country, manipulating colleagues and university staff to cover up the disappearance. When questioned, Lucas confessed to having caused Julian's death during a fight and hiding the body in an abandoned well on the outskirts of the city. The case shocked Vienna and gained international attention, leading to changes in the protocols for monitoring foreign students and stricter registration requirements in student residences. A distraught Alejandro moved to another apartment and spent months in therapy, dealing with his guilt and fear. The building was monitored for months, and former classmates were questioned about their involvement in the cover-up. Many admitted that Lucas pressured them psychologically, creating an environment of silence and fear. The university implemented new channels for anonymous reporting and psychological support for exchange students. The story of the substitute room has become a symbol of the hidden danger in seemingly safe environments and the importance of not ignoring signs of manipulation and collective silence, especially for vulnerable international students. For students around the world, it has become a warning. The real danger may be right next door, hidden beneath the routine, waiting for just the right moment to turn coexistence into a real nightmare. And in cases of disappearance, every detail ignored can be the difference between life and death. The list on the wall. When Mariana Lopez, 24, arrived in Toronto for a communications exchange, her biggest challenge was finding an affordable place to live. After weeks of searching, she agreed to share an old apartment downtown with two roommates, Emily, a biology student, and Adam, a reserved Canadian who spoke few words. Adam was polite, kept the house clean, and rarely interacted beyond the essentials. His room was always locked and he never allowed anyone in, not even for cleaning or maintenance. At first, everything seemed normal, except for a few small details. Adam never received visitors, avoided talking about the past, and would disappear for hours without warning. Mariana and Emily talked about the strangeness, but attributed it to their colleague's introverted personality. One day, Emily decided to move in with her boyfriend, leaving Mariana alone with Adam. As the weeks passed, Mariana began to notice subtle changes in her surroundings. Personal objects would move around, doors she was sure she had locked would appear unlocked, and sometimes she would hear soft footsteps in the hallway during the early hours of the morning. Adam seemed to be watching her more closely, appearing silently in the kitchen or hallway, always with a distant, fixed gaze. While cleaning, Mariana noticed a crooked picture in the hallway near Adam's room. When she tried to straighten it, she realized that there was a sheet of paper stuck to the wall, hidden behind the frame. It was a list of names, all crossed out with red pen, except for the last name written in pencil, Mariana Lopez. The shock was immediate. Mariana recognized some of the names. They were former roommates whose belongings were still in boxes in the building's storage room. Frightened, she searched the names online and discovered local reports about mysterious disappearances of young students, all with the same address registered as their last place of residence. The pattern was always the same. Foreign students, with no family nearby, disappeared without a trace. The atmosphere became unbearable. Adam began to act more strangely, observing Mariana discreetly, locking himself in his room and changing the locks. Mariana noticed that he followed her at unusual times, as if she were being tested. She felt like she was being watched inside her own house. Personal objects were moved around. Doors that she had locked appeared unlocked, and she heard whispers coming from Adam's room during the early hours of the morning. Determined not to be the next victim, Mariana began recording everything: photos of the list, screenshots of conversations, reports of disappearances, and even recordings of suspicious noises. She contacted the building manager, who revealed that Adam had lived there for years and that from time to time roommates would disappear or move out without warning. The building manager never questioned it because Adam always paid the rent in advance and kept the apartment tidy. The tension reached its peak when Mariana found a note under her door with her name written in capital letters and the phrase, "You trust too much." That same night, she heard footsteps in the hallway and saw the light in Adam's room on until dawn. Unable to sleep, she decided to notify the police, who initially treated the case as paranoia, but agreed to file a report after seeing the evidence. The investigation revealed a disturbing history. Adam was suspected of involvement in at least 5 student disappearances over the past 4 years. In his room, police found boxes containing the victim's personal items, diaries with detailed observations of routines and habits, and maps with escape routes. There were also search records of methods of disappearance and psychological manipulation. Adam was arrested while trying to flee the city. During questioning, he confessed that he targeted vulnerable victims, always roommates with no close family ties. He kept the list as a ritual, crossing off names after each disappearance. The case shocked Toronto, leading to changes in student rental protocols and awareness campaigns for international students. Mariana, deeply shaken, moved to another neighborhood and spent months in therapy. Her story became a reference in debates about safety in shared housing and the danger of blindly trusting seemingly harmless colleagues. For students around the world, it was a warning. The real danger could be on the other side of the wall, hidden under the most banal routine, just waiting for the right moment to turn living together into a real nightmare. Mariana's trauma did not end with Adam's arrest. She began to suffer from insomnia, anxiety, and a constant fear of being watched. She changed her lifestyle, avoiding sharing accommodation and preferring individual apartments, even if they were more expensive. She became an activist in support groups for foreign students, sharing her experience in lectures and awareness campaigns about safety in shared environments. The list on the wall case became emblematic in Toronto and other university cities, leading to debates about the responsibility of landlords and building managers and inspiring changes in student housing policies. Mariana gradually rebuilt her life, but she never forgot the feeling of terror when she realized that her name was next on the list, and that she almost became another victim of a predator who hid behind routine and silence. The night photographer Rafael Mendez, 25, arrived in Hamburg excited about the opportunity to work at an advertising agency. To save money, he decided to share a modern apartment in the city center with a roommate. The ad seemed perfect. Central location, affordable rent, clean environment, and a seemingly easygoing colleague. Jonas Weber, an information technology student, was polite, reserved, and always willing to help with internet or electronic problems. Raphael soon realized, however, that Jonas was obsessed with privacy. He always locked himself in his room, avoided long conversations, and never allowed anyone to touch his devices. During the first few weeks, Raphael noticed flashes of light. During the night, coming from the living room and the hallway, he thought they were reflections from cars on the street, but realized that the lights were coming from inside the apartment itself. One night, when he woke up to go to the bathroom, he saw a flash coming from the kitchen. He approached cautiously and found Jonas standing there, motionless, holding his cell phone, which he quickly hid when he noticed Raphael's presence. His roommate changed the subject, saying that he was just testing the device's flashlight. Over time, Raphael began to feel like he was being watched. He had the feeling that his conversations were being listened to, that his habits were being monitored. Personal objects were being moved around, and he noticed small holes in strategic spots on the walls, such as near the bed and the shower. One night, while cleaning his room, he found a tiny camera hidden behind a book on the bookshelf. The shock was immediate. Raphael searched the apartment and found 3 more cameras. One in the lampshade in the living room, another in the kitchen, and a third embedded in the smoke detector in the bathroom. Desperate, Raphael decided to investigate. He accessed Jonas's computer while he was sleeping and found encrypted folders with hundreds of videos, recordings of showers, phone conversations, clothes changes, intimate moments, and even audio of personal discussions. There were also screenshots of messages and detailed records of Raphael's schedule, routines and preferences. Jonas kept a digital diary where he wrote down everything Raphael did, from the time he woke up to the type of food he ordered for delivery. The horror grew when Raphael discovered that Jonas was sharing the images on underground voyeurism and blackmail forums, selling access to exclusive content from people who shared his apartment. There were comments from other users encouraging Jonas to record more, suggesting angles, and even asking for specific videos. Raphael found conversations in which Jonas negotiated fees to provide intimate images of other roommates from previous apartments. In private chats, Jonas received requests to install cameras in new locations, detailing how he managed to hide the devices without arousing suspicion. Feeling violated and panicked, Raphael began recording evidence. He made copies of files, took photos from hidden cameras, and recorded conversations in which Jonas unknowingly admitted to having installed security devices in the apartment. Raphael realized that Jonas kept a meticulous monitoring routine, including noting times when Raphael was alone, received visitors, or made video calls. Jonas even monitored deliveries, saving packages and receipts of correspondence to track spending habits. Tensions escalated when Raphael realized he was being followed outside his home. One weekend, he noticed Jonas watching him from afar in a cafe, and on another occasion, he saw his colleague standing across the street while he was chatting with friends. Fear turned into paranoia. Raphael began to avoid going out alone, changed his routines, and asked co-workers for help. One night, when he returned home, he found an anonymous note under the door. Be careful what you look for. Determined to take action, Raphael contacted the police. Initially, they treated the case as an invasion of privacy, but after analyzing the amount of material and Jonas's involvement in blackmail forums, they opened a criminal investigation. The police discovered that Jonas was responsible for dozens of similar cases in Hamburg and other German cities. He changed apartments every semester, always installing cameras and recording roommates, selling the material on international forums. When searching Jonas's parents' house, they found hard drives with files on victims from several countries, as well as lists of possible future targets. The case gained national attention, leading to debates about security in shared housing and digital crimes. Raphael, traumatized, moved to a private apartment and spent months in therapy, dealing with the constant feeling of being watched. The experience motivated him to participate in awareness campaigns on privacy and digital security, warning young people and students about the risks of sharing an apartment with strangers and the importance of checking for possible hidden devices. The story of the night photographer has become a symbol of modern terror, the predator who hides behind a common facade, using technology to invade privacy, manipulate and blackmail, while the victim doesn't even realize they are being watched. For those who live in big cities and share housing, this is a warning. The real danger may be in the next room, waiting for just the right moment to transform routine into a clandestine horror show. The Ritual of Silence, Giulia Ferraro, a 21-year-old philosophy student, rented a room in an old apartment in the historic center of Bologna. The flat was spacious, with tall windows and narrow hallways, and she shared the space with 3 other students. Among them was Matteo, a reserved young man who kept few words, always dressed in black, and had a peculiar nighttime routine. At first, Giulia thought he was just another introverted classmate, but she soon realized that there was something unsettling about his presence. Matteo avoided long conversations, kept his room locked, and was rarely seen during the day. Giulia began to notice strange noises coming from his room in the early hours of the morning. Whispers, the sounds of objects being dragged, and sometimes a strong smell of incense wafting through the hallway. One night, when she got up to get a drink of water, she saw a dim light under Matteo's door and heard muffled voices. She peered through the keyhole and saw shadows moving in circles as Matteo muttered words in Latin. As the weeks went by, Matteo began to receive nighttime visits from strangers, always with their faces covered and dressed in black. They would arrive silently, enter his room and leave hours later without saying a word to anyone. The atmosphere in the apartment became tense. The other roommates preferred to ignore it, but Giulia couldn't sleep. One night, she heard a muffled scream coming from Matteo's room, followed by absolute silence. The next day, when she questioned his roommate, he just smiled and said it was just a meditation exercise. Giulia's concern grew when she began to notice posters of missing people scattered around the university and the neighborhood. They had all disappeared in the last few weeks, always at night with no witnesses or clues. When she did some research, she discovered that most of them were students who had recently arrived in the city with no family nearby. The pattern coincided with the beginning of the nightly visits to the apartment. Determined to understand what was happening, Giulia discreetly installed an audio recorder on Matteo's bedroom door. That night, she captured the sounds of singing, laughter, and phrases like, "Silence is the key," and "Only the chosen remain." The next morning, she found a strange object on her bedroom door, a small cloth bag with hand-drawn symbols, and a note that said, "Don't ask questions." Tensions rose even further when a classmate of Giulia's disappeared after a party. She had mentioned a few days earlier that she was meeting an interesting group led by a young man with light eyes and a soft voice, characteristics that matched Matteo's. Julia took the recordings and the note to the police, who initially dismissed the case as paranoia, but when the number of disappearances increased, they decided to investigate. The police began to surreptitiously monitor the building. Julia, increasingly frightened, noticed that Matteo was becoming increasingly restless, locking himself in for long periods of time and changing his schedule. One rainy night, Julia woke to a noise coming from the hallway. She peeked through the crack in the door and saw Matteo leading two hooded young men into the bedroom. She heard whispers, the sound of furniture being dragged, and then an unsettling silence. The next morning, one of the roommates failed to show up for breakfast or return home. Julia, overcome with despair, decided to search Matteo's room while he was away. She forced the lock and entered. The atmosphere was suffocating, with walls covered in strange symbols made with charcoal, melted candles, and a makeshift altar with photos of missing young people. There was also a wooden box with personal objects of the victims, bracelets, watches, locks of hair, and newspaper clippings about the disappearances. In a notebook, Matteo wrote down dates, names, and phrases such as "silence protects" and "the ritual must continue." At the back of the room, Julia found a secret passage behind the closet, leading to a small, dark room. Inside there were benches arranged in a circle, dark stains on the floor, and more symbols on the walls. It was clear that rituals were taking place there. Julia took photos of everything and quickly left, taking the notebook and some objects as proof. When the evidence was handed over to the police, the investigation gained momentum. It was discovered that Matteo was part of a secret group responsible for initiation rituals and disappearances of young people in the region. The group recruited vulnerable students, promising them belonging and protection, but used them in violent rituals and planned disappearances. Matteo was one of the leaders, responsible for selecting and monitoring the victims. The police operation resulted in the arrest of Matteo and other members of the group, who confessed to involvement in at least 8 disappearances. The case shocked Bologna and gained national attention, leading to awareness campaigns at universities and changes in security protocols for international students. Julia, deeply shaken, moved to another neighborhood and spent months in therapy, dealing with the guilt and fear of being the next victim. The ritual of silence has become a symbol of the danger lurking in seemingly safe environments and the risk of ignoring signs of manipulation and violence. For students around the world, it has become a warning. The real danger may be right next door, hidden beneath the routine, waiting for just the right moment to turn coexistence into a real nightmare. In university towns, where the sense of community and trust is strong, Julia's story echoes as a somber warning. Never ignore instinct, never underestimate silence, because sometimes it is just a disguise for horror. And so we come to the end of our 7 horror stories involving roommates who are hiding deadly secrets. So which ones scared you the most? Will any of them make you think twice about sharing a house with a stranger? Tell us in the comments which one was your favorite. If you enjoyed this dive into the darker side of everyday life, don't forget to leave a like. This really helps the channel grow and encourages me to bring you more spine-chilling stories. And if you haven't subscribed yet, take advantage now to subscribe and activate the bell.